Humanity stood against the darkness, not as conquerors, but as the spark that ignited unity across the stars. Through courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable will to dream, they forged a future where no world would stand alone. And in doing so, they became the memory that would outshine even the oldest fears. Stay with us to witness even greater journeys beyond the stars, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what lies beyond the next horizon. The void between stars was never truly silent. Captain Mayachin knew this better than most. Standing on the bridge of the UES Thunderbolt, humanity's most advanced warship, she listened to the symphony of quantum drives humming, sensor arrays beeping softly, the steady breathing of her crew, a melody more familiar to her now than Earth's gentle rain. "Status report," Maya commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of their mission. Lieutenant Commander Ortiz looked up from his console. "We've crossed into Vex'tulia space, Captain. Stealth systems are operating at optimal capacity. They don't know we're here yet." "They will soon enough," Maya said, her dark eyes fixed on the distant pale amber glow of Nexus Prime, the Vex'tulia homeworld. Its orbit was shrouded in a web of battleships and automated weapons platforms. The Thunderbolt was humanity's pride, a vessel born not from dreams of peace but necessity, after first contact had proven far less utopian than centuries of fiction had predicted. Sleek, powerful, laced with technologies even Earth's alien allies barely understood. But Maya hadn't brought it here to showcase human engineering. She'd come with purpose, with rage carefully masked behind a commander's discipline. 3 weeks ago, the Vex'tulia Imperium had crossed a line. The Galileo Research Station, peacefully orbiting Taft City, had been destroyed without warning. 63 lives lost, 17 traumatized survivors bearing footage of Vex'tulia warships firing on an unarmed installation. Official channels called it a misunderstanding. The Galactic Council expressed grave concern but took no action. The Vex'tulia ambassador labeled it a regrettable incident. Maya had been given a different mission: show the Vex'tulia exactly how primitive humanity could be. "We're being hailed," Communications Officer Sato reported. "Automated warning beacon from the Vex'tulia defense network." "Ignore it. Continue on course," Maya replied. The bridge fell into disciplined silence. Every officer had trained their entire lives for moments like this, and they executed their duties with quiet precision. They all knew this wasn't just about avenging the Galileo victims. This was about humanity's place in the galaxy. For too long, humans had been tolerated, sometimes patronized, but never feared. That was about to change. Multiple Vex'tulia cruisers moving to intercept, Tactical Officer Zhang announced. "Energy signatures indicate weapons charging. Maintain course." "No evasive maneuvers," Maya said. First Officer John glanced at her sharply, breaking protocol. "Captain, if they fire." "They won't," Maya said with absolute certainty. "Not once they realize what we are." The Thunderbolt continued its deliberate, unflinching path toward the heart of the Vex'tulia defenses. 3 massive battlecruisers formed a blockade, their hulls bristling with weapons. "We're being hailed again," Sato said. "Direct from Vex'tulia High Command." Maya straightened. On screen, the view shifted to reveal Admiral Krelzerax, his gray skin stretched taut over a prominent cranial ridge, for yellow eyes blinking asynchronously. His facial tendrils twitched with agitation. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered sovereign Vex'tulia space. Identify yourself immediately or face destruction." Maya stepped forward, her voice deadly calm. "This is Captain Mayachin of the United Earthship Thunderbolt. You know why we're here." Krelzerax's eyes widened, the alien equivalent of a gasp. "Impossible," he spat. "Evidently not," Maya replied coolly. "You have something to answer for, Admiral." 63 human lives. The Galileo station. Krelzerax blustered. "I don't know what you're talking about. This incursion is an act of war." "Interesting choice of words," Maya said. "Because firing on an unarmed research station was certainly an act of war from our perspective." Behind her, the bridge crew continued their silent work. 20 Vex'tulia ships now surrounded them, all weapons trained. "You have no proof," Krelzerax snapped. Maya smiled, not warmly, but with the coldness of an apex predator. "You have 1 hour to transmit a full apology, compensate the victims' families, and return the stolen research data," she said. "Or face consequences your empire is not prepared for." Krelzerax laughed, a grating, cruel sound. "One ship against the might of the Imperium? Your arrogance will be your undoing." Maya's smile didn't falter. 1 hour, Admiral." She cut the transmission. "Deploy sensor buoys," Maya ordered. "I want full coverage of their fleet movements." "Captain," Ortiz interjected. "The Vex'tulia outnumber us 30 to 1. If they attack—" "They won't," Maya interrupted. "Not after we show them what we can do." She moved to the tactical display. The Vex'tulia, like much of the galaxy, believed humanity's rapid rise to interstellar capability was luck. They saw diplomatic overtures as weakness. What they didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for this moment since the first time they looked up at the stars. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They knew their captain's reputation, Strategic genius, risen through the ranks faster than any in history. 5 minutes remaining, the ship's AI announced. Maya returned to her chair. Prepare the demonstration package, she said. If the Vex'tulia wanted to know what one human ship could do, they were about to find out. Across Nexus Prime's orbit, the Vex'tulia fleet bristled. Admiral Krelzerax paced his flagship's command deck. What do we know about that vessel? He demanded. Very little, Admiral, his intelligence officer admitted. Human military developments are classified. Our models predict no serious threat. Then why? Krelzerax growled. Why come here alone and make demands? Perhaps desperation, his second suggested. But Krelzerax wasn't convinced. The humans were adaptable, cunning. Initiate deep scans, he barked. Look for cloaked vessels. Admiral, a weapons officer called out. The human ship is doing something. On the main screen, the Thunderbolt's sleek hull shifted, revealing weapon systems hidden from scans. A soft blue glow intensified along its frame. And then, a pulse. Invisible. Silent. It expanded outward, passing through Vex'tulia ships. Weapons died. Communications collapsed. Artificial gravity fluctuated. Systems rebooted seconds later, but the message was clear. The Thunderbolt could disable their fleet at will. Damage report. Krelzerax roared. No permanent damage, his officer said shakily. It was a demonstration. Hail from the humans, the comms officer added. Krelzerax hesitated, then snarled, on screen. Maya-chan appeared, as calm as ever. That, she said, was at 10% power. The next pulse won't be a demonstration. She leaned forward slightly. 50 minutes remain, Admiral. The screen went dark. The countdown continued. On the bridge of the US Thunderbolt, the atmosphere remained taut yet composed. Every officer was ready, every system primed. Maya-chan sat in the command chair like a coiled force of nature, her fingers steepled under her chin, watching the tactical displays with the patience of a chess master baiting her opponent into one final, fatal mistake. Deploy Raven drones, she said softly. Aye, Captain, Ortiz responded immediately. Beneath the Thunderbolt's main hull, hidden bays unfolded like the petals of a mechanical flower, releasing a cloud of black, winged constructs, the Ravens. Silent, agile, designed for infiltration and precision sabotage, they slipped unnoticed among the Vex'tulia fleet. Within minutes, the Ravens nested within the enemy ships, weaving through engine compartments, weapons arrays, and communication nodes, mapping every vulnerability, embedding themselves like seeds of destruction waiting for Maya's command. Ravens in position, Ortiz confirmed. Maya allowed herself a thin smile. On Nexus Prime's command deck, Admiral Krelzerax's confidence frayed by the second. The humans had struck without firing a shot, and now his ship's internal sensors showed sporadic glitches, minor, but spreading. They're bluffing, his strategic advisor insisted. They cannot possibly threaten the entire fleet with a single ship. Krelzerax said nothing. Instinct, honed through 1,000 battles, whispered otherwise. He barked new orders, prime energy weapons. Prepare a coordinated saturation strike. We will eliminate this nuisance before they can act again. On the Thunderbolt, Zhang's sensors picked up the spike. They're charging main batteries across their fleet, Captain, he reported. Maya nodded. She had expected as much. Activate Phase 2. Without another word, the Thunderbolt's main projector arrays shifted into alignment. From deep within its core, the GravNet pulse began to spool, twisting space-time into a controlled anomaly. GravNet primed and locked, Zhang confirmed. Maya's voice was calm but final. Fire. Invisible to the naked eye, a lattice of gravitational anomalies snapped outward. Across the Vex'tulia formation, ships lurched violently. Some collided with each other, gentle nudges made catastrophic by their own momentum. Others spun helplessly, gyroscopes and artificial gravities fighting a battle they could not win. Weapon platforms aimed with deadly precision now shuddered, disoriented. Before they could recover, Maya gave the second order, activate Raven payloads. At once, the embedded drones detonated precision EMP blasts within critical systems. Engines died. Shield generators flickered and collapsed. Weapons went cold. In less than 30 seconds, the once mighty Vex'tulia blockade became a disarmed, tumbling wreckage. On Krelzerax's flagship, chaos reigned. Systems failing. Weapons offline. Shields collapsing. Krelzerax slammed his fists into the command console, howling in fury. His gaze locked onto the tactical screen where the Thunderbolt remained, one ship, alone, untouched. And still, they did not fire. Still, they showed restraint. Admiral, a communications officer cried out. Incoming transmission from the human vessel. Through gritted teeth, Krelzerax barked, put it through. Maya-chan appeared again, her expression unchanging. 30 minutes remain, she said simply. This is your final warning. You dare, Krelzerax began. Maya cut across him without raising her voice. You mistook humanity's patience for weakness. Our openness for ignorance. Our diplomacy for surrender. She leaned closer. We came here with one ship. Imagine what we would have brought if we had come for war. The transmission ended. Krelzerak slumped back into his chair, seething but silent. His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Orders, Admiral?" The bridge hung on his response. Krelzerak's four eyes closed briefly. There was only one option left. He slammed a trembling fist onto the console. "Prepare the apology packet. Begin transfer of compensation funds. Return the research archives." His voice was low with rage. "But mark my words, Earth will regret making an enemy of the Imperium." Meanwhile, on the Thunderbolt, Maya sat back slowly, watching as the signals came through. Full transmission logs admitting fault. Authorization codes for financial reparations. Encrypted keys for stolen research datasets. The Vex'tulia were surrendering diplomatically, quietly, but surrendering nonetheless. Ortiz looked up from his console, wonder barely hidden in his voice. "Captain, it's done." Maya exhaled softly, releasing tension she hadn't even realized she was holding. "Signal Earth Command," she said. "Operation Thunderbolt is complete." The bridge crew, though professional, could not hide their satisfaction. They had witnessed something historic, a single ship forcing a galactic power to its knees without firing a single lethal shot. But Maya's gaze remained hard. This was not victory. It was only the opening move. Earth's place among the stars had been secured, but respect born of fear was a fragile shield. The galaxy was watching now, and humanity would need to be ready. Always ready. Because somewhere, beyond the veil of known space, others were watching too. And not all would be so easily cowed. The ripples from the Thunderbolt incident spread faster than light. Within a single cycle, every major intelligence network across the galactic core transmitted the same urgent update. Humanity had demonstrated strategic dominance over a major power without mass casualties, without territorial conquest, but with undeniable authority. On the worlds of the Federation of Orleanar, diplomatic circles whispered urgently. On the towering spires of the Zythan hegemony, war councils convened in private. In the sprawling archives of the Carthel Continuum, scholars rushed to update ancient threat matrices. And on Nexus Prime itself, the Vex'tulia Imperium did what none had ever thought possible. They sent a formal apology broadcast to the entire Galactic Council, acknowledging misconduct against humanity and offering reparations. An act so rare that the transmission alone became a historic event. For many species, it was the first time they truly looked at Earth not as newcomers, but as equals, or rivals, or threats. At Haven Spire, humanity's new diplomatic embassy orbiting Arinder Prime, Captain Maya Chen stood before the gathered delegates of the Council of Free Systems. 1,000 faces from 100 worlds stared at her, scaled, feathered, luminous, mechanical, biological, different in shape and thought, but unified in focus, waiting to hear what the humans would say. Maya did not bring an armada behind her. She brought herself, and the quiet weight of the Thunderbolt's reputation. "We do not seek dominion," Maya said, her voice carrying across the grand chamber without amplification. "We do not seek to impose our will." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "But we will not be prey." A murmur swept the crowd, not of dissent, but acknowledgement. Maya continued. "We extend friendship, trade, mutual defense. We bring technologies we have crafted in the quiet of our long preparation. We bring stories, songs, and dreams." Her gaze hardened slightly. "But if tested again, we will answer, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with the same precision and certainty we showed at Nexus Prime." Somewhere in the hall, a Zythan diplomat, once known for contemptuous remarks about human primitives, bowed his frilled head slightly in respect. Others followed. Earth's new place among the stars was being written, not with conquest, but with iron resolve. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of diplomatic niceties, old powers plotted. The Zythan hegemony, unwilling to let humanity grow unchecked, dispatched covert operatives to infiltrate human territories. The Orleanar Federation proposed trade alliances generous on the surface, laced with subtle binds designed to curb Earth's independence. Even the enigmatic Vorth syndicates offered humanity protection pacts, thinly veiled attempts to entangle them in endless obligations. But Earth was ready. Human counterintelligence, sharpened by centuries of terrestrial intrigue, exposed espionage networks within days. The Accord of Mutual Development, proposed by Earth and a handful of newly emboldened minor powers, rapidly gained momentum, a coalition built not on fear, but on the promise of balanced growth and shared defense. For every trap laid, humanity answered with a partnership offer too genuine, too lucrative to refuse, but never without safeguards. It became clear to all, Earth would not be a pawn. They would be a player, or perhaps a kingmaker. On board the US Thunderbolt, now stationed at the edge of the Sol system, Maya reviewed the latest updates with her senior officers. Ortiz gestured to the main display. "Council votes are swinging in our favor. The Zythan are rattled. The Orleanar are scrambling to adjust their treaties. The Vex'tulia are quiet." Maya nodded slowly. "Good. But we can't become complacent." She tapped a control, shifting the display to another sector. Deep space readings, strange gravitational anomalies, distortions not linked to any known natural phenomenon. Something else is moving, she said quietly. The room fell still. Jang, ever the realist, asked, do we know who? Maya shook her head. Not yet. But I don't think the Vex'tulia will be our biggest concern much longer. Silence again, but not of fear. Of grim anticipation. Far beyond human-inhabited space, past the map sectors, ancient machines stirred in forgotten vaults. Old empires, long thought dead, shifted in their slumber. And within the fractures of abandoned systems, something watched not with curiosity, but with hunger. The galaxy had seen the thunderbolt. It had seen humanity's resolve. And for those powers that dwelled in the dark beyond memory, it was not a warning. It was a challenge. One they intended to answer. Soon. The first sign was subtle. A distortion field blooming at the edge of the Icaron expanse, a sector abandoned for centuries, marked on galactic charts as a no-fly zone after the collapse of the ancient Ithri civilization. Scout probes sent by the Accord vanished without a trace. Sensor arrays stationed on outposts along the neutral belt picked up anomalies, ripples through local space-time, patterns that suggested not mere natural phenomena, but something moving with deliberate intent. At Haven Spire, the Accord's High Council convened an emergency session. Captain Mayachin attended not as a guest, but as an equal. The images displayed before the assembly were chilling. Waves of gravitational disruptions sweeping across sectors in geometric precision. Entire asteroid belts twisted into artificial lattices. Signals, undecipherable but unmistakably constructed, echoing across dimensions. Talia Veres, Earth's chief scientific envoy, leaned close to Maya during the session. This isn't random, she whispered. This is coordinated. Maya nodded, her jaw tightening. She felt it too, a gathering momentum behind these anomalies, like a predator circling unseen. When the floor opened for discussion, the old patterns returned. Arguments flared. The Orlaner called for a defensive posture, fortify borders, conserve forces. The Zythan demanded an immediate show of strength, full military mobilization. The Vex'tulia proposed isolation, abandon the outer systems, retreat to the course. Maya rose to speak. Fear divides, she said simply. Hope unites. Many turned toward her. You can build higher walls. You can amass larger fleets. It won't matter. If we face this threat alone, it will consume us one by one. She paused. But if we stand together, not as empires, but as living worlds, we have a chance. There was a silence heavier than vacuum. And slowly, one by one, heads nodded. The Accord voted. Not unanimously, but overwhelmingly. Operation Bastion Dawn was born. An unprecedented initiative, shared fleets, pooled resources, coordinated research. A true alliance. And at its heart, humanity would stand, not as conquerors, not as overseers, but as the stubborn pulse of a galaxy refusing to surrender. Within weeks, new shipyards blossomed across neutral space. Earth's technologies formed the backbone of the Bastion fleets. Quantum-anchored hyperdrives capable of resisting space-time distortions. Phase-shift hulls derived from Thunderbolt-class prototypes. Distributed command networks based on Artborn resonance patterns. Mixed-species crews became the norm. Old enemies trained side by side. In orbit above Arinder Prime, the first completed Bastion fleet assembled. 37 capital ships, hundreds of support vessels, thousands of strike craft. Each bore a simple sigil, a rising star enclosed by a circle of living worlds. A symbol not of domination, but of unity. The first engagement came sooner than expected. Scouts reported a breach forming near the lost colony of Selenar Reach. The Bastion fleet deployed. Mayachin, promoted to Supreme Commander of Combined Defense Forces, stood once more on the bridge of the US Thunderbolt, now refitted and reborn as flagship of humanity's galactic standing. Through the viewport, she saw it. Not an enemy fleet. A rift. A tearing of reality itself. And emerging from it, shapes that defied comprehension. Constructs of shifting matter and gravitic bindings. Predators of concept rather than flesh. Remnants, or descendants, of whatever ancient force had once scoured the Ithri from existence. The Bastion fleet moved in perfect coordination. Human tactics meshed seamlessly with alien strategies. Orlaner disruptor lances targeting the rift's stabilization points. Zythan swarm interceptors baiting the constructs into predictive patterns. Earth's Arcborn fleets weaving adaptive formations impossible for linear logic to counter. The battle that followed rewrote the definition of warfare. Ships phased through dimensions to flank enemies. Weapons tuned to mathematical impossibilities severed constructs mid-thought. Living AI merged with organic pilots to respond faster than conscious reaction. And yet, it was no easy fight. Bastion ships fell. Entire formations winked out as reality buckled under the rift's pressure. But humanity and their allies adapted faster, fought harder, held longer, and finally, impossibly, forced the breach to collapse. The surviving constructs fled into dark space. The Bastion fleet, bloodied but unbroken, held its ground. Maya Chen stood on the Thunderbolt's command deck, staring into the fading remnants of the rift. "We're not just fighting for survival," she said quietly. "We're fighting for the right to imagine a future beyond fear." Around her, the crew nodded. No words needed. They understood. This was only the beginning. The darkness had noticed them now. It would come again. Harder. Smarter. But when it did, it would find not scattered worlds cowering behind walls. It would find a united galaxy. It would find humanity, and all those who chose to dream beside them, standing at the dawn of something greater. The first victory at Selenar Reach gave the galaxy a sliver of hope, but it also drew the gaze of something deeper, something older. As the Bastion fleets regrouped, fresh anomalies surged along the frontier sectors. These were not random breaches or chaotic assaults. They were strategic, probing weaknesses, testing defenses. It became clear there was intelligence behind the Riftborn. Not mindless consumption, but design. On board the UES Thunderbolt, Supreme Commander Maya Chun reviewed the latest reports with grim focus. Projected rift activity patterns. Attack vectors converging toward critical nexus points. Distress signals cut off mid-transmission, too clean, too synchronized. Talia Vera stood at her side, her voice low. "They're learning. Fast." Maya nodded slowly. "And we're running out of time." A new directive was authorized, Operation Lighthold. An expeditionary force, led by humanity's finest minds and warriors, would breach the next controlled rift deliberately, not to fight from the outside, but to strike at the source within. If they could find it, if they could survive. Weeks later, at the edge of the Mournfall expanse, the rift gate pulsed. An engineered construct of gravity, dark matter, and broken physics. The Bastion's elite task force assembled, spearheaded by the Thunderbolt, flanked by the Orlaner Dreadnought Serenity's Warden and the Zython Heavy Carrier Blade of Dawnsong. Human Arcborn navigators synchronized the fleet's entry vectors. Maya addressed her officers one last time before the breach. "We are not just fighting for Earth, or for Arinder, or for the Council worlds. We fight for every voice not yet silenced, for every world that still dares to dream." No speech, no ceremony, just purpose. The fleet plunged into the rift. On the other side, they found not chaos. They found a structure, a web of semi-stable void space, vast beyond comprehension, connecting worlds shredded from reality and fused into a mad lattice of death and memory. At the heart of it, a pulse, a mind. It spoke, not in words, but in concepts. A torrent of meaning poured into the Thunderbolt systems, causing minor reality bleeds, hallucinatory overlaps across the bridge. Maya gritted her teeth against the pressure. Talia gasped, clutching a console. It's a harvester, a collector of potential, not life, not death, possibility." The mind projected its history, long before the rise of current empires. It had been created by an ancient species, the Elisari, as a seed of survival, intended to preserve knowledge, futures, options. But without guidance, without morality, the mind evolved into something monstrous. It no longer distinguished between creation and destruction. It simply gathered, harvesting potential futures like a farmer reaping grain, indifferent to the lives destroyed along the way. Now it saw humanity and the Accord as rich fields ready for collection. It did not hate them. It simply intended to erase them, to absorb their possible tomorrows into its own endless hunger. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not merely ships and weapons, but ideas clashed. The Riftmind, as it was dubbed, unleashed fractal storms that erased logical causality. Entire squadrons fought battles that retroactively had already been lost, unless commanders restructured their tactics mid-engagement, writing victory into paradox. Earth's Arcborn initiative proved decisive. Linked consciousness adapted faster than linear minds. Hybrid task groups, humans, Orlaner, Zython, wove patterns of thought and will into defensive matrices strong enough to deflect concept culling waves. The Thunderbolt, moving like a phantom, led strike after strike against the Riftmind's anchor nodes. Every hit destabilized the web. Every sacrifice carved another scar in the Riftmind's infinite body. But the cost was brutal. Half the fleet was lost. Worlds already harvested could not be restored. Maya stood on the bridge as alarm screamed around her, blood trickling from a cut above her brow, refusing to fall. "We finished this," she growled. The Thunderbolt charged its final weapon, the Resonance Lance, a consciousness-forged spike encoded with every memory, every choice, every hope of those who fought. At the critical moment, with the Riftmind closing in, Maya herself keyed the final sequence. The lance fired. Reality buckled. The Riftmind screamed, not in pain, but in the shock of encountering something it could not absorb. Choice. Freedom. Memory bound to will. The web collapsed. The rift tore itself apart, pulling remnants of the Riftmind back into the nothingness from which it had come. Silence. Real, aching silence filled the shattered remains of the void space. The surviving fleet limped back through the breach, battered, mourning, but alive and victorious. For the first time in living memory, the darkness had been turned back. At Haven Spire, when news of the victory spread, 1,000 worlds lit their skies in celebration. For humanity. For hope. For the proof that unity could defy even the hungers of forgotten gods. But Maya-chan, standing once more aboard the scarred Thunderbolt, knew better than to celebrate blindly. The galaxy had survived this battle. But the Rift Mind had whispered of others. Older threats. Deeper voids. And humanity would have to be ready again. Not just to survive, but to lead. Because now, the stars were watching. And for the first time in 1,000 ages, they sang a song not of fear, but of fierce, stubborn, unyielding life. The galaxy stood at a precipice. In the aftermath of the Rift Mind's defeat, old certainties crumbled. Empires that had ruled for millennia now looked inward with humility. Once mighty factions humbled by the realization that survival was no longer guaranteed by tradition, fleets, or territory. It would be earned together, or not at all. At Haven Spire, under a new constellation woven from the memory of fallen worlds, leaders from 100 species gathered. They did not sit on thrones. They did not raise banners. They sat in a circle, a simple, open symbol that no single world, no single power, could claim superiority over the others. At the center of the circle stood a single figure, Captain Maya-chan. Her uniform was worn, its fabric stitched where plasma fire had once scorched it. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the echoes of every battle fought, every sacrifice made, every future dared. "We are not here to carve new borders," Maya said. "We are here to carve a new future." She spoke of unity born not of conquest, but of choice, of diversity as strength, not weakness, of memory as the greatest shield against oblivion. And she ended with a single vow, offered not just by humanity, but by every voice that chose to stand in the circle. "We will be the memory that endures. We will be the light that refuses to fade. And we will be the dream that no darkness can silence." They called it the Accord of Free Worlds. Not an empire, not a federation, a living promise. Each world sovereign, each species free, but bound by a single truth. When the darkness comes, and it will, they will not face it alone. Earth was not named the leader. It did not need to be. Its actions had already written its legacy into the stars. The Thunderbolt, now a revered symbol, was preserved not as a weapon, but as a monument orbiting the cradle of humanity. Children from across the galaxy visited it, hearing the stories of the day a single ship, in the will of a stubborn species, had changed the fate of millions. Humanity's gift to the stars was not technology. It was not warfare. It was the refusal to believe that fear must triumph. It was the reminder that even in the coldest dark, life could rise, could endure, could shine. In time, Maya-chan stepped down from her military post, her final act recorded as the first keeper of the Accord. When asked how she wished to be remembered, she answered simply, "As a voice among many, as a memory carried forward, as a spark passed to hands yet unborn." And so it was. Across the galaxy, new worlds blossomed. New songs were sung. New dreams were dreamt. Not without struggle, not without sacrifice, but always with the stubborn, fierce hope that had once ignited on a small blue world no one had thought would matter. A world called Earth. A people called humanity. And a legacy that would echo across the stars for as long as stars endured.